My question's in regard to economics in the Austrian School of Economics. I mean, nobody really paid that much attention, and now suddenly the crisis seems to vindicate, the role of the Fed in terms of manipulating or altering the incentives in the economy. And just wondering if there may be a return to that school.
Well, the School of Austrian Economics, I learned about that, I'm trying to think, 62 years ago, I think.
62 years. Now you're telling everybody how old you are. He's slightly over 80.
They have some insights that maybe we have forgotten about. Some of the old scholars of the so-called Austrian school. I literally took my first course in economic theory from an Austrian, who was of the Austrian school. But the idea of credit creation being important for one symptom of what was going on has certainly been vindicated, I think. If you look at the statistics in the United States particularly, I think to some extent this would be true in Europe, but it began back when I was chairman of the Federal Reserve. Just at the beginning, the amount of credit in the American economy relative to the GNP has just skyrocketed. I think it used to be more or less the same, and now the amount of credit outstanding is 3 times the GNP, if I remember the figures roughly. And that is reflected in the leverage of the financial firms and the investment banks that have failed, and in commercial banks to some extent. That they all built up the balance sheet on the liability and asset side because of a sense of easy credit and no problems. And that's what's come home to roost. So suddenly they haven't got enough capital to support the credit, which wouldn't surprise most Austrian economists, I suspect.
I'd like to thank you for your very illuminating perspective and ask you, do you think the US economy is headed for what Keynes would have described as a liquidity trap? And how long do you think the recovery would take?
What's been described?
It's been described as a liquidity trap.
Oh.
And how long will the recovery take?
Well, I don't think we're not in a liquidity trap at the moment. If you think of that in the way I learned about it in the non-Austrian school, you have low interest rates or zero interest rates, but the economy is so depressed nobody wants to borrow. The problem now is nobody wants to lend, not that nobody wants to borrow. And that's quite arguably I wouldn't call it a liquidity trap, but I understand that even people that have liquidity don't want to lend.